So that's what that initial user does. Usually he finds it's valuable, he shares it with his work group. Eventually they get to a amount of data being processed that they need to buy a license. Eventually more groups in the company find out about it, it expands, and then you can have an enterprise deployment, okay? And Splunk will scale along that whole spectrum. Hold on. Okay, there we go. Here we go. Now, the Splunk software, it's one piece of software that you download, but this piece of software can be configured in different ways. So, there are several different roles. One, and I'm going to go out of order, indexing and search. Let's talk about indexing or just indexing. Let's just talk about indexing. The raw data comes in through whatever means. You send this logging data into the Splunk indexer. You just send it to the Splunk indexer at, either on syslog or the forwarder sends it. It doesn't matter. And once the data hits the indexer, it takes it, it parses it, it breaks the messages apart, it tells where the lines are, it identifies the date and timestamp, it normalizes it, because all different devices have different ways of stating date and time. Splunk takes that and harmonizes it to one thing, puts it in your time zone. Okay. It also parses it out, and it makes it readable. Then it indexes it. So it goes through, and it finds all the different terms in it, puts pointers on it, and creates an index, making it very speedy to search. The search head talks to the indexer and has the capability of creating searches and searching the index data. Now, the bottom two is a different story. What do they do? What you can do on Splunk is that when you have a computer running an operating system, such as a Windows desktop, a Mac desktop, a server, or anything like that, you can put a lightweight agent on there called a forwarder. Very lightweight, does not impact the CPU or anything, but it has lots of capabilities in terms of choosing what data to send, harvesting it from that computer, and forwarding it. One reason this is good is because a Linux box or a Windows box usually stores a lot of different logs and a lot of different log files. So instead of firing off the logs across the network, usually what a Linux box will do is store them in a file called .log, security.log, file.log, or something like that. Now, the deployment server allows you to configure and manage a whole bunch of different forwarders. You could have thousands. You could have tens of thousands. So Splunk can scale to do all of that. Now, but if the first thing you do is you install your own free copy, Splunk, your own one Splunk server can do all of those roles. So you don't need one computer for each one of those. They could all be on one box. And a lot of people do that initially. Okay. Splunk scaling. One Splunk search head can support about 10 simultaneous users. When you have more than that, you add another search head. Easy as that. One Splunk indexer can index up to 100 gigabytes of incoming message data per day. If you have more than that, you can add another linearly, just like that. And you can have thousands and thousands of Splunk forwarders, meaning desktop servers, etc. All right. This brings us to lab number 1. Now, what you need to do is open your lab document and open your student login sheet. The student login sheet gives you the web address where you need to point your browser. It happens to be a server up in the Amazon cloud. And you will be presented with a login screen. What will that look like? it will look like this. You see, username and password. Now, out of that student login sheet, pick your name, use the username, which will be student 1, student 2, student 3, and pick the password. If you don't see your name on that sheet, send a text to Taylor, and he'll give you, he'll assign you one, because we have more than just what's on the list. Okay, so go ahead and sign in and do lab number 1, and we'll be back at, let's say, the bottom of the hour.
Like Abby said, if you guys have any questions or login issues or anything like that, please go ahead and don't hesitate to ask. Put them in the chat box, forward it to the host, and I'll be happy to answer them for you. One more thing that'll help us out, when you guys are done with the lab in your WebEx chat box, if you guys could go ahead and click on the green check mark just so Avi and I know if you guys are done with the lab before we're getting going with the rest of the presentation, that would be great. Thanks.
Uh, Buddy, we're going to go ahead and get started. Keep on going. If you need more time, you can feel free to continue in your lab environment while we're continuing the lecture. Okay, getting data in. How do you do that? First of all, we talked about this before. Where could it be? And the answer is absolutely everywhere. Sensors, like AAA logs, proxy servers, security devices, firewall, any network devices, GPS data, network storage, web farms, web services. We have one customer that Splunks his elevators. Of course, these are elevators in a very large office building in Japan. So they Splunk the elevators for data on client, their client's usage. You can Splunk jet engines, Splunk chemical plants, you can Splunk homes. You can Splunk virtually anything, and it's only going to get more and more prevalent. Okay, we need to know where it is. We need to know how it connects to the network. We need to know, is it log files? In other words, like a Windows server, does it create a file and then drop these logging messages into it? What do I mean by that? It's something called tail. Now, if you're familiar with Linux, and you guys are very familiar with Linux or Unix, when I say tail, I mean you take a file and you keep adding to the file at the end of the file. So you have this long string of text, this long section of text, and at the very bottom of it, what will happen is the new text will come in at the bottom. That's called tailing. So that's often you see. You have usually more than one log file. Sometimes you don't have a file. Sometimes it's a network feed. What do I mean by that? Well, what I mean is, if you want the logging messages from the Cisco switch, or I guess a temperature sensor or anything like that, usually what they'll do is they'll have a little interface where you can configure a syslog server. So they use something called a network protocol called syslog. And yeah, that is on UDP 546, I believe. I'll get back to you on what the exact number is. But it's a network protocol, and it sends these messages configured that way. Could be a CSV, could even be in a database. Okay. What can we monitor? Where can we get this data? Once again, we can get it from files and directories, like we just said. We can monitor physical files by using a forwarder on that machine. Network inputs, we can have these machines send their data directly to Splunk using syslog. Scripts, we can use scripts to interface with non-traditional kind of devices, which might be something specialized, like an industrial device. Windows, file system change, and we need to be an administrator to add any of these inputs. So you have to configure the Splunk server to get the data. You have to tell the Splunk server to listen for the data. Okay. Splunk applications. Splunk applications are not what you typically think of when you think of applications. They're not coded in Python or C or anything like that. What they are is a collection of searches, maybe even elaborate searches using advanced functions, dashboards, graphics, maps, other functionalities such as menus, all wrapped up in one container, and that's what we call an app. Splunk has built two apps which they actually sell. One is called, they have one which they sell. They got two apps which they support which are free. They're called StarNex and Windows. Those are for monitoring Linux boxes and Windows boxes. And there's one app which they have built which they sell because it's very elaborate. It's called Enterprise Security. Now, the lab environment that you're going to be logging into, or that you have logged into, has Cisco Security Suite, and it's got the StarNex Splunk app for Unix. We call it StarNex because, it could be Linux, it could be Unix. Okay. To add an app, you need to be an administrator. Okay. As I said, we got two Splunk supported apps, one for Unix, one for Windows. By the way, users may also, once creating an app, users can upload that for others to use, and that happens. The mileage may vary with those. So Splunk provides two free apps for OS level monitoring, okay? Windows, Unix, or Linux, so we'll call it StarNex. They gather the local log data, okay? They are simple to configure. Okay, and you can use them with forwarders, meaning that you can, you have a version which allows the forwarders to send the data instead of having this app go out and collect it. Okay. We also have one for Cisco Security Suite. Now this is built by Cisco, and what it does is it looks at any Cisco security device, such as a ASA firewall or a Cisco IPS, and it collects that data and presents it in a variety of useful ways, such as you see on this map. This map is identifying attack vectors, and they're sourcing attack vectors. In other words, what it does is it takes the source IP of an attack, it GeoIP looks up its GeoIP, and does a reverse GeoIP lookup, finds its geographic location, plots it on a map. There you go. Okay. Lab environment has a few of these logs, and as you can see, in your typical Linux environment, you'll see logs in var log. All right. Root var log. There you will see your various logs. This is pretty typical. Okay, applications we have installed in your lab are StarNex and Cisco Security Suite. Right. Which brings us to Lab 2. Okay. Lab 2, we are going to give you 20 minutes, or basically approximately 20 minutes. So we'll say to the top of the hour. We're going to do this till the top of the hour. You can go ahead and get started on this. Now, there is an optional lab step you can do. When you're in the Cisco Security Suite, there's a menu option under Splunk for Cisco Security called Profile and IP. So, how are you going to get an IP address to profile? That's a good question. Well, let me see if I can answer that question while you go ahead and get started. Let me see if I can answer that. Okay, give me a second. Let's see. And let me share out my login to the lab server. Okay, which I think is here. So the way you can harvest your own IP address is you can do a little search here. You can do a little search here. What can you search? Well, keep in mind that Splunk puts data, once it's indexed, into a file called an index. It's actually called an index, and the indexes have different names, and you can have more than one. In our case, we have an index called name. And since I don't want this to take a long time, I'm going to go to the time picker here, and I'm going to say, search the last 24 hours, please. And then I'm going to search, I'm going to tell it what index I want to look at. Index equal, let's say, main. What would I get if I fire that off? Let me see. Well, looks like what I'm getting is a bunch of security data. You see iron port, you see squid, which is a type of web security. And as I go through these, watch this. Do you see this highlighted field here? Or this gives me, so these highlighted fields here, 12.130.60.4, this gives me my source IP. Let's limit myself to one host. Let's say I only want to look at the iron port information. I just have to click there where it says host is equal. You see, I can just click there and it pops it up into the search window for me. Now I'm only looking at iron port information. And looking over here, I have these source IPs. Here's one, here's one, here's a different one. Pick any of these, copy it, and paste it into the window. So you would go here, go to the Cisco Security Suite, and profile an IP, and just copy and paste your chosen IP into there, and it'll provide you with a lot of interesting information. Just a little tip there for your lab. And now I'm going to stop sharing and proceed with the lab. Please give us a green check, which is down at the bottom of the participants list. You should see a number of icons, such as the emoticon symbol. And on the left, you should see a green check. If you could click that green check when you're done, that will tell us when we can proceed. Thank you. Not to interrupt. If you have any questions, any problems with the lab, problems using the lab, problems with your apps, or anything of that sort, please send your question to host in your chat window. Click on Send to Host. That will be Taylor. And ask them whatever you need. Okay, we're going to proceed. Let me get back to the presentation. Here we go. So, we've talked about getting data into it. We've talked about using some of the apps. How do you use that search bar? I showed you a little bit prior to this lab. Let's see what we can find here. Well, here's what it looks like, and you saw me display that to you. On the top, you have a menu, which gives you a few options. Search puts you right here where the search bar is. Pivot is something we will talk about a little bit later. It's kind of like pivot tables in Excel. Reports are stored searches. Alerts are just what it says. They are where you construct a search and you tell it to fire off a alert, which could be an email sent out or text when that search is something. And dashboards, which is, as it says, different dashboards where you can see pre-configured different visualizations. Okay. Hey, Taylor, you think you could mute whoever that is, not unmute? We're getting a little bit of background noise. Thanks. Appreciate that. Okay, so we got the search bar, and as I said, the search bar is just like Google. You type searches into it. There is an actual search language, which is fairly elaborate. You can have pipes. We'll probably show you that later. A pipe just means that whatever's on the left should be processed by whatever on the right. There's Boolean operators, there's statistical functions, all sorts of things. You got the time picker here to say what time period the search is. You've got the magnifying glass to fire off the search. You have a few control buttons over here. You have events. Events are what you find when you do a search. Depending on how specific the search is, that's how many events you'll get. Over here, it tells you how many events you got. And they're displayed here, one per line. The time and date stamp is called out over here. And on the left are what we call fields. What's a field? Oh yeah, this is the timeline. Shows you the time distribution of your events. But these are the fields. What's a field? Well, inside your message, you have various pieces of information. Let's take this simple piece of information right here. Okay? 131, 178, 233, 243. Well, obviously that's an IP address. In our case, it's the source IP address or the IP address of the client who's trying to connect to this web server. Okay? Fine. So, but look at this carefully and you will see that it is not labeled. There is nothing that says source or client IP equals and then 131, etc. It just has the address sitting there. But we know from our knowledge of a web server that that is the client IP. So, and as a matter of fact, because Splunk comes to you pre-trained for lots of different types of messages. In other words, a lot of the common types, like Apache web logs, are already pre-configured inside of Splunk. So it knows that that is the client IP, and it has it called out right here. So these are what's called fields. A field is a section of the message that contains a particular type of information that could be labeled. In this case, client IP, you see? So then the client might have a username, and there might be many other, fields inside of this message. Interesting fields means they occur in 50% or more of all the messages, and then they're put over here. Selected fields are fields you select to be called out every single time, and they exist over here. And what does this do if they're listed over here? So for this particular message, the host it comes from, the actual server or device is called this. The type, the file it comes from on that host is this, and the type of it is this, WSA squid. WSA squid is a type of a web server security. So, at any rate, that's the construction of this search pane. Now, drilling for data. How can I narrow down the results? It might take a long time if I do search all time for everything, especially if I've got a big installation. Well, time range picker, as I showed you, use the narrowest time range you can. Timeline spreads them out on the timetable so you can pick them according to the exact time. Then you got the event data. You got the field sidebar. And you can click on those fields. They're very useful. We'll see that. And you've got search language. Now, since you have this in the PDF, you have these links here. And by the way, if you go to Splunk.com documentation, you can see all the documentation you want. These are some quick references for you. Okay. So let's say I wanted to do an ad hoc investigation. That means I'm just typing as I go. So I could show host. I could go to data summary, but let me do that live for you. Okay. Let me do this for you on my own login, and that way you can see it a little bit better. Okay, hold on. See what we could do here. You know what I'll do. Stop sharing briefly. Go to Safari. Here we go. This is my login to the training server. Okay. I hope you guys can see that properly. Okay, so let's see. Let's go to the search and reporting app. You remember we were just looking at the search pane with the search strip on it and everything that I just was showing you. That's under search and reporting. Search and reporting is actually an app. That's the default app for Splunk. We can go there, and here we are. Now, what's interesting is I can go to data summary. It will kind of tell me what I've got in my, it'll kind of tell me what I've got in all my data. I've got these many hosts. Here they are. That tells me how many events from each. Sources. These are all the different files, you know, that I may be getting messages from. Source types just tells you what kind of device is producing these messages. A squid, like I said, web security, ASA. This is a Cisco firewall. You know, IPS is an intrusion prevention system. And that's coming in by syslog, as you can see. So different things. Well, what if I want to look at something? Let me see, what could I look at here? Let's look at the IPS for a second. Oh, that says all time. That's a lot. In fact, what we could do is we'll type the stop button, and that does something called finalize. Once I got enough, it stops. Now, what can I do with these fields here? These are all intrusions. These are all attackers. One thing I'd really like to know is who the attackers are. Okay. So when you click on a field, it gives you the top 10 values right in front of you. Okay? And I can chart them right now. All I got to do is click on top value, and it gives me a little chart there. What if I don't like this bar chart? Let me see. Can I change it? What about a pie chart? Yeah, that looks a little bit better. And I can look at, as I hover over it, it gives me, you know, the stats for that particular slice. But look at this. This guy's doing a lot of activity. I'm worried about him. So the thing you have to know is that the data is still there. What if I click on that slice? Now I'm only looking at the data for that particular attacker. Okay, and you can see it threw it up here in the search window. And I'm not going to do it here, but I could geo-IP him and find out his geographic location also. So this is kind of what we would call an ad hoc investigation. And as you can see, with just a few clicks, I became aware of a guy, this guy, attacking from this IP address, and I could take further steps. I could filter him out. I can put up a honeypot for him. I could geo-IP him and find out where he's attacking from, etc. Okay, so that's what I could do with that. Now, hold on. Let me. Here we go. And I will go back to my presentation now. There we go. So that kind of gave you an idea of an ad hoc investigation. Now, what can I do? Oh, let me go back to that. Let me go back to my Safari. Here we go. I hope you can see my Splunk search screen again. Now I've got kind of like a, okay. Okay. Hold on one second. I am going to do something administrative. I got a new lab document for you, so bear with me. Okay. Bear with me while I go to the new lab document.
Yeah, while Avi uploads that, a few of you guys were asking me during the labs what's going on with the Unix application. This lab document will go ahead and, you know, solve all of that.
So, Taylor, this is the V2.1 that we're looking for?
This is it, yep. It has the new
V2.1.
updated Nix app.
All right, let me upload that. Okay, guys. So what you're going to see is on your transfer window, you've got the new you've got a fourth document on the bottom. So this will take the place of the lab document you've been using. Delete that and instead use the V2.1 document. Give you a minute to get that. So while your guys are downloading, hopefully, this fourth document, getting rid of the version 1.0 of your lab, putting it, and instead using the 2.1 document that I just threw up in the download window. I want to go back to this and take a look. What do I see here? I have this interesting search. I would like to save it. Can I? The answer is yes, I can save it. All I have to do is go over to Save It. And I can save it. I can save it as a report, meaning I can call it back up and run it anytime I want. But what if I would like it to alert me when this guy comes in? I can save it as an alert. And when he hits this, when he hits this search, it'll fire off an alert. But let's see. I'm going to call him attacker 1. No, okay. 156.015. Okay, that's good enough for me. That's what we're going to call him. I'm going to say this is problem attacker from Beijing. Not a large stretch. Okay. Right here, it says it's a scheduled report, but what if I want it to be real time? In other words, as soon as this attack comes in, and as soon as I get an alert from my IPS, I want to be notified. So I'll say, every time there's a result, every time he hits the IPS, I want to know about it. File is required. All right. Attacker, no problem. Go back. Try this again. Alert. Right. Okay. Let's say I want to schedule this real time to resolve. There we go. Okay, I don't know what that was. So I've saved it. I gave it a name and a description, and that description could be pretty long. You could say why I'm worried about this attacker, what attacks is he using, has he compromised us, and I could just list it in a display. Triggered alerts will show up in one of my management screens. Well, I could have it send an email. That's pretty popular. And you got to set your email up. Excuse me. You got to set your email up, and you can have like a whole group of emails that this goes to. You can include the results. That is, the actual event that is generated when he attacks can be sent inside this email. You can also run a script that maybe fires back in a counterattack or whatever. You can make this private. Only you have it, or you share it in the app. That means everyone that logs on can see it. And you can save it. I'm not going to save it. So that's the kind of thing you can do. As you can see, this is very powerful because if people discover things that are useful, they can just save them, and then your particular enforcement form becomes more and more valuable. Okay, let's see. Let's go to point here. And that's kind of what happens in an ad hoc investigation. Well, I said we also had the Cisco security app installed. Okay. And a lot of the popular searches that you do with Cisco devices is already in here. And that brings us to Lab 3. Lab 3, we're going to go 20 till the hour. You can go ahead and get involved in that. Okay. So go ahead and dive into your lab document, V2.1, the new one I just, put into the file transfer window for you. It'll be the one on the bottom, delete your 1.0 lab, use your 2.1 lab, and I'll see you at 20 till the hour. Please give us a green check when you're done with your lab so we can know how you guys are doing. I'll be back here with you. I'm going to go ahead and share out my PowerPoint deck once again. And here we are. Okay, visualization, charting, visualization, graphs, dashboards. This is a big strong point of Splunk. So, I think we've seen this before, but when you go to any of these fields, remember we saw these fields, when you collect a bunch of events, Splunk will extract all the fields in the event and put them here on this side for you to look at. So for example, say we're looking at just the events from an IPS, intrusion prevention system. Let's just say, you know, if we are, then I know that there's going to be a description of the attack, because an intrusion prevention system prevents attack. There's going to be a description of it. So if I click on this field here, I will get the top 10 of them. And it tells me a few things. It tells me how many events I have of that one. It tells me what percentage of all the events that one is, and it even gives me a little graphical thing here. Now, this is the top 10 values. If I click on where values, I'll get the bottom 10 values. Okay? Fine. Now, if I were to say, click on top values by time or top values, if I just click on the top values, here are the top values. If I click on this word, top values, it will give me a bar chart of graphically representing how many there are, and I can change that presentation to anything I want: scatter chart, line chart, pie chart, you know, whatever I want to do. Okay. Now, we have pivots and we have the event format tabs, but we'll get into those a bit later. This we've seen, and the fields, they are like the bedrock foundation of how you use Splunk. Very important, very good, very useful, very convenient. As we saw before, if I were just to click on the word Unix password file attempt, as I'm looking at all my events, it will throw it up into the search bar, and then it'll filter down all my events to only include those of this. So very fast way of searching. Okay. Now here's a pivot chart. As we said, pivot is kind of like, pivots are kind of like pivot tables in Excel. And I think the best way for me to show you a pivot is to do it myself. And then I'll let you go ahead to lab 4 and we'll be done. So let me, real quickly, if I could do that for you. Okay. Here is my login into the lab. All right, let's look at pivot. I'm going to click on pivot. And what do I see? I see something called data models. What's a data model? Data model is where someone knowledgeable has gone through the events and created searches of things non-technical people want to know about. So data models is a way of letting non-Splunk people use Splunk. What do I mean? Well, what I mean is, let's say we're working at a company called Buttercup Games, and Buttercup Games has Splunked its web servers and its business process management, okay? So now maybe project leaders, maybe warehouse people, well, all sorts of people might want to know what kind of sales we're getting, you know. So what can I do about that? Do they have to know the search language? The answer is no. I can put it all in a pivot structure, okay? Now, how can I do that? Well, first of all, I go through and I organize all the Buttercup Games information in a data model. Let's see how that might look. Oh, what if I click on it right here? Okay, there we go. So this is how I've organized this information. Basically, we're a web-based company. People make HTTP requests. They're successful or failed. Failed means there's something wrong with them using the website. Successful is, of course, they successfully logged in and was able to purchase something. These are things that sales managers would really like to know about. Okay? So what I might do is say, I want to know about all the successful requests. I want to know what people have successfully purchased, let's say. I could click on that. Now, I get to a pivot. And let me see. Well, that didn't go so well. I don't have any successful requests. Let me go to here. Well, I guess I don't have any data populated in here. Let me see if I can go in here. Hold on. This is my personal copy of Splunk that's running on my laptop. And so this is a good example of how you can download Splunk and use it for your own purposes. I do have data in here. Let's go to this. And now I got a lot more data models on my computer. Okay, I got the same Buttercup games. And what else do I have here? Nation state. Sworn I had FAE. Maybe not right now. Let's see if I got it here. Bear with me. Yeah, there we go. This is what I wanted. Okay. Now, I've got these different data models. In other words, I might want to create a lot of these. I might need assets and identities for my security people who don't want to know Splunk, but they want to be able to graph data that comes into Splunk. Inventory, compute inventory. Maybe my IT department needs an inventory of devices. Federal Aviation Administration. Maybe I'm monitoring air traffic. Maybe I'm an airline. So let's see what would happen if I went into this data model. Okay. Okay. Flight data. This is what this is. I want to be able to analyze my flight data. Okay. So canceled flights, that might be something I want to know about. What would happen if I click there? We'll wait for that data to parse out. See if we get anything in here. Looks like I do have a good number of events. Let me finalize that. Let's collect a few more. And if I press this button, this is called finalize. This will stop the search. When I think I've had enough events, I'll just stop it. Just like that. Okay. Now, the first thing I see is a count, a simple count. How many canceled flights do I have? This many. All right. Maybe I'd like to split that down these rows. Maybe I just don't want to know the whole number of canceled flights, but I'd like to know the number of canceled flights by airlines. I'd like to know which airlines have the most canceled flights. Can I do that? Oh, maybe I could. If I click here, I could split these rows. Let's see. And airline description. I want to know which airline has how many canceled flights. So if I click on that, I won't bother with the label. Add it to the table. What's going to happen? Give that time to parse out. And now, guess what? I have categorized. Now have a count of canceled flights per airline. Just a few clicks, and I have a very useful table here. And what if I want to visualize that table? Once again, I'm going to my old standby pie chart. I can just click pie chart because there's all these visualizations here. Scatter chart, bar chart, vertical or column chart. This would be a single value display. Marker gauge. What if I do this? Voila! Here I have the pie chart. If I hover over the sections, it gives me the stats for that particular section, etc. Now, what if I don't want the data for American Airlines to appear in here for whatever reason? Well, I can filter it out. I can add a filter based on airline description. A filter type matches. Wait for that to load up. Okay. American Airlines. Let's see. How can I? American. I'll just say if it has American in it, let's filter it out. Now it's recalculating the pie chart. Hopefully. Because this is all happening in real time, folks. And of course, I'm running this on the Mac, just doing a bunch of other things. So it's going to take a few seconds to show up. And I can change different parts. Drill down yes means that if I click on the pie slice, it takes me back to the, events. And you never lose the events in Splunk. Taking a little bit of time. Match is American. Oh, I see. Contains. What if I do that? So match means it only gives me what, if it has the word American in it. What if I go limit? I think limit might be the one which takes it out. But I can add as many of these filters as I want. And this is the new feature in Splunk 6 called pivots. Well, I'm just going to move on because this is taking a long time. And as I try and get it to give me PowerPoint. There we go. So let's, with that, no further ado, let's get into Lab 4. Let's create a pie chart and a dashboard. And I will talk to you at the top of the hour. And we'll sum up. Okay, everybody. We're at the top of the hour, so I'm going to sum it up for you here. Keep in mind that you have our email addresses on your PDF of the slide deck. You can email us for questions. Feel free to. Keep also in mind that the lab server will be staying up for till about 10 o'clock tonight. You can feel free to continue to log in and play with it as you wish. We've looked at, we've viewed the functionality of Splunk, the architecture, what machine data is, how you get it in, how you search for it. We've reviewed the visualization. I would remind you all, whoops, sorry about that, hold on. Yeah, I would remind you all that GTRI is an elite partner with Splunk. If your company wants to expand Splunk, install Splunk, configure Splunk, train people on Splunk, or buy licensing for Splunk, GTRI is the company that can help you do that. And I would also remind you that right now, right this very second, you can go to Splunk.com and you can download your own copy of Splunk and start playing with it right inside of your company. You can start collecting data from anywhere you want, and you have probably a good start on doing that just from this little boot camp here. You can also get more, you can also get documentation and manuals from the Splunk website. Now, what I'd like to do, we're concluded, but I'm going to continue for a few minutes. Whoever wants to hang on. I'm going to display to you the Splunk website for a little bit so you can see what's going on there. Feel free to leave if you've got a hard stop, you want to go. The lab is complete. Feel free to keep doing the lab if you wish. Feel free to leave if you wish. Anyone who wants to stay on, I'm going to share out my browser so I can show you a few things on the Splunk website. Here's our little pivot. Let's see what we got here. What can I do here? This is what the Splunk website looks like, in case you haven't seen it before. And if you want to download Splunk, here is what you do. You go to Product, you click on Splunk Enterprise, click. And you go here to where it says Download Splunk, and you choose your version. Remember to be correct about 64-bit versus 32-bit. There you go, Linux, Windows, Solaris, Mac, FreeBSD, AIX, HPUX. It's got a lot of platforms. So let's say if I wanted to download this one, then what does it do? It takes me to a thing where I have to create a free Splunk.com account, and then I can download it and I can install it. Okay. If you're a Linux guru, you know how to do that on Linux. If you're Windows, you've got an MSI where you can just click install. Now, what else do I got on this website? I have something called Community, which is very useful. My apps are here. I can go here and post questions to get answers. There's blogs, but you're welcome, Jeff. I can go here to documentation. What will I see if I go to documentation? Well, I can get tutorials. What can I get here? Various tutorials. This is a search tutorial, so this will teach me how to search. And I can get this as a PDF, but I can also go to Splunk Enterprise. What will I see there? I will see lots of documentation here. I will see an admin manual, which will teach me how to install. I've got the data and pivot. Oh, here's the installation manual for when I'm installing it. I got dashboards, and they're pretty good manuals also. As you can see, managing indexes and clusters, lots of different manuals for your perusal, lots of documentation. So, and the apps, you can always, of course, look at the apps. If you want to search for apps, there's a search bar here. This one, this enterprise security is one I said that is a paid for app. Others are not. Okay? And I can go here to answers, and it's kind of like a board. I could pose questions if I want. I can look at questions that have already been asked, etc. What I also find very good, just for your information, is if I go here and I type the word Splunk, and then I pose my question just in Google, and I say how to create a dashboard. Now this is just asking Google, but I proceeded with the word Splunk, and a lot of times it's really fast. So I use Google a lot to find stuff in Splunk, just to let you know. As you can see, there's you got some YouTube items here, which you can look at, a lot of YouTube. So that's just kind of a summary of how that works. Oh, one more thing I'll show you on the website. While we're talking about it, go back to Splunk.com, products, Splunk Enterprise, and download Splunk. And now that I've got to the download Splunk window, what if I go up here? What will I see? I'll see different older releases, different options for downloads, but one thing in particular, very important, I'll see Universal Forwarder. Now what's that? Universal Forwarder is something I can put on a server or a desktop computer that I want to monitor. And this is like Splunk, but without the graphical front end, and it will harvest machine data from that Windows box or from that Unix box and send it to the Splunk indexing. These are also free. The universal forwarders are free, and Splunk itself is free as long as you're using under 500, as long as you are indexing under 500 megabytes of data per day. So this is where you get your forwarder, and especially the Windows version has menuing items that allow you to do it. You might have to consult the installation manual if you're installing on Linux or Unix, such as Solaris. But it's just as easy for Mac, by the way, because you use the DMG. And let's see what we have more, since I see we still have a few people online. This is all bonus stuff. Certainly you don't have to, if you have someplace to go, you could certainly go. There we go. What else do we have here? These are our email addresses. Feel free to email us for questions. Now, all this chart says is that to scale Splunk, you just add more boxes and it scales linearly. You got 200 gigabytes per day, use 2 indexes, et cetera, et cetera. We've got some, what would I call a hardware reference. I don't know what to call it, but they have some reference models for what kind of hardware they want on Splunk. If you're using Splunk commercially, like for actual production, you really want like 12 cores on 64-bit architecture. If you're running it on Windows, you want 12 cores, you want 16 gig of RAM. And if you're configuring an indexer, you want 10K SAS in RAID 10. You want fast I/O. I/O is really important in indexes. Okay, so that's what you want for an indexer. 1 gig of throughput for the network connection is is perfectly okay. Read write intensive, as you can see on this item there. RAID setup is 10. That's a fast RAID. And we don't like SAN or NAS for indexes. We really like locally attached storage. But if we do have network-based storage, we want it to be really, really fast storage, like maybe Flash or something like that. For search ads, it's a little bit compute intensive, and I think we need to upgrade these. We really want 12 cores, not 4 cores. Maybe 12 cores, once again, about 12, 16 gig RAM. I'm going to have to update these slides. Can you install Splunk in a virtualized environment? Yes, you can, with caveats. It's going to be slower, and the resource requirements do not change, so you have to make sure your VMs are actually provisioned properly. We have a client who is actually install all their Splunk servers on VMs, but only one VM per piece of hardware, one VM per server blade. Now you might ask me, why should I do that? Well, the reason they did that is for vMotion. With vMotion, since they're VMs, even though there's only one on each server, now with vMotion I can copy those VMs to a different location and run them for disaster recovery. So it's an interesting thought. There's a little overhead with the the hypervisor and such, but they this is what they did. You got to have dedicated CPU. You got to have good disk I/O. Can't slack off on disk I/O. All right. So here's the hardware reference architecture. Search head, 16 cores, 16 gig. Right. And we like direct attached storage rather than network-based. It could work if it's fast. Indexers, we like 19 terabytes because we have to store the indexes over there. 16 gig of memory. Okay. Faster the better, obviously. What else do we got here? Retain source types, as I said before. It becomes pre-configured to already understand a lot of log file formats, such as Access Combined, which is your Apache web server. WebSphere, you may have heard of WebSphere. Asterisk, you may have heard of Asterisk. What else do we got here? WebLogic. Sugar CRM, you might have heard of that one. Linux messages, Cisco.syslog, of course, that's the standby. Send to mail. All right, so there's a lot of different formats that you probably recognize built into Splunk when you download it. And source type is just a way of identifying what kind of log you're looking at. XS common means I'm looking at an Apache web logs. Okay, WinEvent security. WinEvent log security. I'm looking at a Windows log. The security, Windows security.log, or whatever it's called. That's what source type means. It's the type of event it is, and it allows you, it gives you a handle to sort your data very efficiently. You might only want to look at the Apache web logs, and you've got a lot more besides that. You can narrow it down in one click. That's all I got. Thanks for coming to our presentation. Feel free to contact us, and have a good day. And lab server will be open to you until 10 tonight.
Thanks, Avi. And like he said, go ahead and reach out to either one of us if you have questions while the server's up. We're happy to answer them. Or if you just have questions in general, just reach out to us. We'd be more than happy to answer them. Thank you guys for joining in today. Hope you all got to learn a little something.